Number 1. The saber-toothed salmon. The Idleman people of Kamchatka tell their children a story about the tusk fish, a creature that returns to certain rivers once each century and arrives among the salmon like a wolf among sheep. The story has been told for so many generations no one alive remembers when it began. It describes with strange precision an animal that science says died out around 5 million years ago. In 1972, ichthyologists Theodore Cavender and Robert Rush Miller pulled bones out of Central Oregon's Madras Formation that should not have existed. Clearly a salmon, but a giant, and projecting from its upper jaw 2 enormous fangs. They named it Oncorhynchus rastrosus, the rake-toothed salmon. The original reconstruction showed the fangs pointing downward like a saber-tooth's, and that image dominated the imagination for 50 years. In 2024, Karen Cleason at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine ran CT scans on the original fossils. The fangs did not point downward. They pointed sideways, like the tusks of a warthog, jutting parallel to the riverbed from the head of a fish that reached 2.7 meters in length, almost 9 feet, and in spawning condition, perhaps 3.7 meters. The species lived from 11 million years ago until 5 million years ago, ranging from California to British Columbia. Like the modern Chinook, it was anadromous, bred in freshwater, matured at sea, at lifespan, 5 to 9 years from otolith ring counts. The contradiction: the gill rakers were finely meshed. This was a planktivore. The terrifying tusks were not for tearing prey, they were for sexual combat, the way moose lock antlers on land. Around 5 million years ago, the species disappears. The cause is unclear. Theories blame collapsing zooplankton, river system reorganization during the Pliocene, or competition from emerging modern Oncorhynchus. But the Idleman stories never stopped. In the 1980s, Russian ichthyologist Nikolai Sokolov spent 4 field seasons investigating tuskfish accounts. In 1976, a Soviet expedition working the Kuril Lake system recovered an unidentified salmonid skeleton with elongated maxillary structures. The specimen was crated for transport to Moscow. It was lost during the dissolution of the USSR. In 2003, an Aleutian fishing crew off Atka Island hauled in a partial carcass with tusk-like protrusions, photographed it, dumped it back over the side. The photographs are gone. Brandon Peacock of the Field Museum genetically dated the saber-toothed lineage's divergence from modern salmon at 16 million years. Carl Schuker has compiled 12 modern sightings between 1947 and 2018, all consistent in size and tusk description across cultures. In 2022, the University of Washington ran an extensive eDNA survey across remote Alaskan and Kamchatkan watersheds. They found nothing, which leaves us in the space between what science can detect and what the people who live there keep insisting they see. Hold on to that space. The next creature survived something far worse than changing climate, then disappeared anyway. Number 2. Helicoprion, the whorl-tooth shark. In 1899, Russian paleontologist Alexander Karpinsky was sent a fossil from the Ural Mountains he could not classify, a perfect spiral of teeth nested into itself like an ammonite shell, but unmistakably the dental armature of some kind of predator. He named it helicoprion. Then for the next 114 years, no one could figure out where on the body the spiral actually went. Some thought it sat on the upper jaw, curling outward like an absurd tongue. Some put it on the dorsal fin, others on the tail. The mystery was solved only in 2013, when Leif Tapanila at Idaho State University put a complete specimen from the Phosphoria Formation through a CT scanner. The whorl was embedded inside the lower jaw. As the animal lived, new teeth emerged at the front of the spiral, while older teeth rotated inward, never falling out, accumulating across the lifespan. Helicoprion lived from approximately 290 million years ago to 250 million years ago, late Carboniferous through early Triassic. That last detail matters. The end Permian, 252 million years ago, was the most catastrophic event in the history of life. 96% of marine species gone. Helicoprion swam through it. Then, 5 million years after surviving the worst extinction in Earth's history, it disappears for no clear reason. The animal grew to 7.6 meters, 25 feet. Despite the colloquial name, it was technically not a true shark. It was a eugenodontid, more closely related to modern chimeras. Diet was almost certainly soft-bodied cephalopods. The whorl drew prey backward into the throat as the jaw closed. Bite force exceeds 7,000 newtons, comparable to a great white. Largest specimen IMNH 49382 found in Idaho in 1950, its tooth whorl alone measures 60 centimeters in diameter, 2 feet across. Mature whorls contain between 117 and 141 teeth. Now consider the geography. Fossils have been recovered from Russia, Idaho, Mexico, Australia, China, and Norway, and the modern reports cluster suspiciously around the deepest oceanic trenches. Off Madagascar, in the Comoros Channel, fishermen have hauled up spiral tooth structures from deep-water trawls. Off the Tonga Trench, similar reports. None have been formally examined. The structures look fresh, meaning not fossilized. Cartilage decays rapidly. The only thing that could be hauled up from a population of living helicoprion would be the tooth whorl itself, which is precisely what these fishermen describe. The Comoros Channel is also where the coelacanth was rediscovered. We will return to that. In 2008, a Japanese deep-sea expedition working the Bonin Trench reported a sonar contact at 1,200 meters depth, consistent with a 6-meter cartilaginous predator. Russian paleontologist Oleg Lebedev proposed in 2017 that surviving eugenodontids may have entered deep-water refugia during the Triassic recovery. American paleontologist Robert Purdy went further, suggesting helicoprion may have inhabited abyssal zones throughout its evolutionary history, explaining the sparse fossil record. The cephalopod prey base is still down there, in enormous quantities. Deep-sea squid populations outweigh all human-caught fish biomass by an order of magnitude. The whorl-tooth shark would have, statistically, more food now than at any point in its known evolutionary history. But not every species we lost is locked away in abyssal blackness. Sometimes the supposedly extinct simply walk back into the daylight. Number 3. The sea mink. The Penobscot people of what is now Maine have a word wetamus for a coastal weasel-like creature that dives for shellfish. The word predates European contact by centuries. It describes an animal larger than a beagle, dark brown, with strong forelimbs and a habit of swimming between offshore islands at high tide. By the time European naturalists got around to formally describing the species, the wetamus was already extinct. The sea mink, Neovison macrodon, was officially declared extinct in 1894. The last confirmed killing took place in 1860 on Campobello Island, New Brunswick. It was endemic to the Rocky Islands and shorelines from Massachusetts to New Brunswick. And it was big. Body lengths reached 91 centimeters, 3 feet, roughly 3 times the size of its terrestrial cousin. The first scientific description came in 1903 from Daniel Webster Prentice of the Smithsonian, after the species was already extinct. Fur trappers had eliminated it between 1820 and 1880. The pelt was prized for its size, rich reddish-brown color, and superior thickness. Diet was seabirds, fish, shellfish, and crustaceans from the intertidal zone. Heavy reliance on lobster and crab from museum stomach contents, a niche no surviving mustelid has filled. Distinctive features included unusually pungent musk glands, an enlarged skull, and partially webbed feet. Mark McCullough of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has argued the species was so distinct it should be reclassified into its own genus, Bison. That distinctiveness matters. The Maine Department of Inland Fisheries has logged 23 reported sightings between 1990 and 2020. In 2007, a naturalist named Anthony DeRoche, working on Roke Island, watched an animal the size of a beagle swim between 2 offshore ledges. He had spent decades observing local wildlife. He knew what an American mink looked like. In 2014, mammalogists from the University of New Brunswick deployed 47 trail cameras across remote Bay of Fundy islands. One camera captured a large mustelid that could not be definitively identified, too big for an American mink, wrong proportions for a fisher, completely wrong habitat for an otter. The image is held by the university and has never been formally published. The genetic evidence is more troubling. In 2018, researchers collected a scat sample from Grand Manan Island. The DNA returned mustelid markers that did not match any documented living species. Contamination with ancient material was considered unlikely given the freshness of the sample. The result was inconclusive. Scientific language for, we can neither confirm nor exclude that the sample came from a living sea mink. Climate-based habitat modeling estimates 12% of the original range remains environmentally suitable, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, in internal reports, acknowledges that rediscovery cannot be definitively ruled out. That is bureaucratic English, for we are not entirely sure this animal is gone. And if a coastal mustelid the size of a small dog can hide in waters humans regularly fish, What could be hiding in waters where humans cannot go at all? Number 4. Dunkleosteus. In 2018, a Norwegian polar expedition called Polar 2018 was working under the Arctic ice sheet near the Gackle Ridge, the slowest spreading mid-ocean ridge on Earth, hidden beneath permanent ice, almost completely unexplored. During acoustic monitoring, the sonar registered a contact, slow-moving, 3 to 4 meters in length, with extraordinarily high acoustic reflectivity. Reflectivity that high indicates dense bone armor. The chief scientist filed the data as anomalous return and refused, on returning to port, to publicly discuss it. It was not the first such contact. Identical signatures appeared in the Sea of Okhotsk in 1992 and the North Atlantic mid-ocean ridge in 2004. Slow target, 3 to 4 meters. High acoustic reflectivity consistent with thick bony plating. Nothing alive in modern oceans matches that profile, except for one creature, extinct for 358 million years. Dunkleosteus was first described in 1873 by John Strong Newberry from fossils in the Cleveland Shale of Ohio. It dominated the late Devonian seas, 382 to 358 million years ago, until vanishing in the late Devonian mass extinction. Russell Engelman at Case Western Reserve University in 2023 reduced traditional length estimates from 9 meters to 3.4 to 4.1 meters. 11 to 13 feet. Smaller than older estimates, still terrifying. The head and thorax were encased in articulated bony plates up to 5 centimeters thick, 2 inches of solid bone armor. There were no traditional teeth. The bone plates of the jaw came to sharpened edges, blade-like, and they sheared as they closed. Bite force at the jaw tip reached 4,400 newtons. At the rear shearing surface, peak forces exceeded 5,300, among the strongest bites of any vertebrate ever measured. Mark Westneat of the Field Museum reverse-engineered the jaw mechanics in 2007. Dunkleosteus could open and snap shut its jaws in 1/50th of a second, fast enough to create a vacuum that drew prey inward. The animal effectively inhaled fish before crushing them. Dunkleosteus belonged to placodermi, armored fish that vanished entirely at the end Devonian, leaving no surviving descendants. So we thought. In 2016, a phylogenetic study by John Long of Flinders University suggested deeper relationships between placoderms and modern-jawed vertebrates may have been seriously underestimated. Some lineages, Long argued, may have left descendants we have failed to identify. The eyes of Dunkleosteus were small but heavily reinforced with sclerotic bony rings, suggesting deep-water habitat. The species was likely viviparous. Internal fertilization with live birth, confirmed for related placoderms by fossils of pregnant specimens with embryos. There is no terrestrial dependency. A small population hidden in abyssal depths would never have to surface. Russian fishing fleet reports from the 1970s describe massive armored catches in the Sea of Okhotsk that were photographed but never preserved. The photographs remain in classified Soviet scientific files. Modern technology capable of definitively surveying the deepest oceanic basins remains limited. Only an estimated 25% of the seafloor has been mapped at high resolution. The other 3/4, in a meaningful sense, is terra incognita. And in that terra incognita, something keeps registering on sonar that should not exist. Number 5. The Atlantic gray whale. In May of 2010, a male gray whale appeared off the coast of Israel. It traveled north along the Mediterranean for several weeks. This single animal disturbed centuries of marine biology. The Atlantic gray whale population had been declared extinct 200 years earlier. Basque whaling fleets hunted them systematically from the 11th century through the 17th. Last confirmed kill recorded around 1675 off Iceland. Then, in 2013, another gray whale appeared off Namibia. In 2015, one off Florida. In 2024, one off Nantucket. In 2024, another off Mauritania. The 200-year silence had broken open into a steady drumbeat. Identification was confirmed via barnacle and lice patterns, body proportions, and the absence of a dorsal fin. The 2010 Mediterranean whale was tracked by the Mediterranean Marine Mammal Research Center. A fecal sample collected from its wake confirmed Pacific gray whale haplotypes. Which makes the question sharper. How did a Pacific gray whale get into the Atlantic? Two competing theories. The first, rare individuals are crossing from the Pacific via the Northwest Passage as Arctic ice retreats. The first ice-free Northwest Passage commercial transit happened in 2008 only 2 years before the Israeli sighting. The second is more disturbing. There has been a small remnant Atlantic population the entire time. Hidden. Reduced. But there. A 2019 genetic analysis of subfossil bones from medieval Norwegian middens revealed the Atlantic gray whale population was genetically separated from the Pacific population for at least 30,000 years before extinction. They were not just a different group, they were a different lineage, distinct enough that genetic signatures should be detectable in any survivors. Yet none of the recent confirmed Atlantic sightings have produced clearly Atlantic haplotype DNA. Either the survivors don't exist, or we haven't sampled the right ones. Phil Clapham of NOAA, one of the world's leading cetacean biologists, has stated that the Atlantic population may not have ever truly gone extinct, just become exceptionally rare. Underwater hydrophone arrays in the Davis Strait have recorded unidentified low-frequency vocalizations consistent with gray whale calls between 2015 and 2023. Gray whales reach 15 meters and weigh 36 tons. Pacific populations travel up to 23,000 kilometers annually, the longest known mammalian migration. They feed on benthic amphipods, sucking sediment from the ocean floor and filtering through baleen, dependent on shallow continental shelf ecosystems. Orla O'Brien of the New England Aquarium, examining the 2024 Nantucket sighting, documented an animal that had been feeding successfully on benthic prey. Successful feeding requires either rapid behavioral adaptation by a transient Pacific individual or a long-standing local population that knows the bottom topography intimately. O'Brien did not commit to either interpretation. Sami oral tradition along the Norwegian coast describes krakavang, a baleen whale matching gray whale anatomy, that allegedly appears once each century. The IUCN currently lists the Atlantic gray whale as probably extinct rather than fully extinct, reflecting genuine institutional uncertainty. If a remnant population exists, it numbers fewer than 100 individuals across vast oceanic ranges. Whether they slipped through the Northwest Passage or have been hiding all along, the Atlantic gray whale is back, and what came back may not be the only Mesozoic giant we wrote off too soon. Number 6. The mosasaur. The most famous historical sea serpent sighting in the Western world happened on July 6, 1734, off the coast of western Greenland. The Norwegian missionary Hans Egede was sailing aboard a vessel near Godthaab when something rose out of the water. The creature was approximately 60 feet in length. Its head was long and pointed, ending in a narrow snout. The body had multiple flippers visible beneath the waterline. A forked tongue flicked from the jaws. The creature stayed visible for several minutes before submerging. The description, written more than a century before paleontology existed as a discipline, matches mosasaur anatomy with disturbing precision. Mosasaurs were marine lizards, closely related to modern monitor lizards and snakes, not dinosaurs and not crocodilians, that ruled the late Cretaceous oceans from approximately 100 million years ago until the KPG extinction 66 million years ago. The largest species, Mosasaurus hoffmanii, reached 17 meters, 56 feet, and weighed up to 14 tons. 4 flippers, a long muscular tail tipped with a fluke-like terminal lobe, and a powerful jawline lined with conical teeth. Skin impressions confirmed in 2010 reveal smooth, scaly hides, dark above and pale below. William Daniel Conybeare formally described the type genus in 1822 from specimens recovered in Dutch chalk quarries near Maastricht. By that point, Egede's account was a century old. No one in 1822 associated the missionary's sea serpent with the marine reptile being described from the chalk. In 1848, the British vessel HMS Daedalus encountered something off the coast of South Africa. 7 officers signed the official report describing a creature with mosasaur-like proportions, enormous body, conical-toothed jaws, multiple flippers. The pattern was identical to Egede's account. The official report sparked international debate that lasted years and was never resolved. The KPG extinction event eliminated approximately 76% of all species. Marine reptile diversity collapsed almost completely. Only sea turtles survived, but the Mosasauridae family contained over 40 genera, spanning a wide range of body sizes. A diverse family is statistically more likely to contain a surviving lineage than a narrow one. Daniel Field's 1996 fossil discovery of a pregnant mosasaur with embryos preserved confirmed the species was viviparous, giving live birth at sea with no terrestrial dependency, Surviving in remote oceanic refugia would not require any anatomical change. The Bering Sea anomaly is a series of unidentified large-body sonar contacts recorded by Russian Pacific Fleet sonar between 1962 and 1989. The contacts share a serpentine acoustic profile, surface and near-surface depth, sustained movement at high speed. Some Russian biologists have speculated they represent surviving mosasauroid lineages. In 2024, a sonar survey off the coast of New Zealand, funded by the Discovery Channel, reported a 13-meter target with movement patterns inconsistent with any known marine animal. Persistent reports from remote South Pacific waters, Fiji, the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, describe creatures matching mosasaur dimensions, clustered around volcanic island chains where deep water access to coastal hunting grounds is geographically convenient. Modern unmanned underwater vehicles capable of mapping abyssal depths have been deployed across approximately 0.05% of the ocean floor. 99.95% of the ocean's deepest regions remain unmapped. Whether the Egede account was a mosasaur, or the sailors of HMS Daedalus saw what they claimed to see, the geometry of the search problem leaves the question open. We have not looked. And if a marine reptile bigger than a city bus has been sliding past us for a while, what about something we know with absolute certainty was here just 200 years ago? Number 7. Steller's sea cow. In 1976, a Soviet marine biologist named Vladimir Bocharnikov was working on the Anadyr estuary in the Russian Far East. He was photographing marine mammals when he saw something he could not classify. Enormous, at least 7 meters long, dark gray, drifting at the surface, browsing on kelp. Its head was small relative to its body. It had no dorsal fin. Bocharnikov knew the local fauna intimately. What he was looking at was Hydrodamalus gigas, Steller's sea cow. The species had been declared extinct 208 years earlier. Bocharnikov reported the sighting through official Soviet scientific channels, and he never recanted. He maintained until his death in 2014 that what he saw was a Steller's sea cow. He was not the first to see one after extinction. Georg Wilhelm Steller had discovered the species in 1741 during the Vitus Bering expedition that wrecked on Bering Island. The sea cow was endemic to the Commander Islands. Steller's original journals described the species as numbering no more than 1,500 individuals at first contact. Already small, already vulnerable. Russian fur traders and whalers used Bering Island as a stopover for North Pacific expeditions, and within 27 years they had hunted the species to extinction. The official extinction date is 1768. 27 years from discovery to oblivion, the fastest documented extinction of a large mammal in recorded history. The sea cow could not dive. It floated on the surface while feeding on giant kelp. Its skin, up to 7.5 centimeters thick and bark-like in texture, protected it from ice and rocks but offered no defense against harpoons. The species reached 9 meters in length and weighed 8 to 11 tons, the largest sirenian ever known. The 1962 sighting near the Kamchatka Peninsula was reported by a Soviet whaling crew aboard the vessel Vityaz. 6 crew members independently described a monstrous manatee floating in a kelp forest. Aleut and Itelmen oral traditions describe kapusnik, the cabbage eater, appearing intermittently into the early 20th century. The Soviet Marine Research Institute investigated 11 separate sightings between 1960 and 1985, all classified as unconfirmed but credible. In 2017, a skeletal specimen recovered on the coast of the Komandorsky Islands was carbon dated. The biologist Maria Shatova led the recovery. The skeleton dated to approximately 200 years old, meaning the animal had lived sometime in the early 1800s, decades after the official extinction date of 1768. The skeleton showed signs of natural death rather than human harvest. Either the species had been holding on quietly, or someone had failed to report a kill. Either way, the death certificate had been issued early. Climate-induced kelp expansion in the Bering Sea over the past 3 decades has created theoretically suitable habitat in regions that have not been intensively surveyed. A 2007 underwater survey of remote Kamchatka coastline recorded unidentified large, slow-moving sonar contacts in kelp forests. In 2009, a fecal sample collected from Bering Island kelp beds returned Sirenian markers that did not match any living species. Bocharnikov saw what he saw. The question of when an extinction becomes a postponement is no longer rhetorical. Number 8. The Caribbean monk seal. In 2014, a tour operator named Adam Bartholomew set up a trail camera on a remote beach in the Berry Islands of the Bahamas. He was tracking turtle nesting behavior. The camera was triggered automatically by movement on the beach. When Bartholomew retrieved the images, one frame showed a large pinnip on the sand. The size and proportions and coloration matched no seal that should be in the Caribbean. There are no seals native to the Caribbean. There used to be. The Caribbean monk seal had been declared extinct 6 years earlier. The Caribbean monk seal, Monachus tropicalis, was declared extinct by the U.S. National Marine Fisheries Service in June of 2008, after a 5-year review, concluded no confirmed sightings since 1952. The last confirmed sighting was off Serenilla Bank between Jamaica and Honduras. It was the only seal species native to the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and western Atlantic warm waters, ranging across hundreds of breeding rookeries from the Bahamas to the Mosquito Coast of Honduras. Average length was 2.4 meters, weight 270 kilograms, 8 feet, 600 pounds. The species was first documented by Christopher Columbus in 1494 during his second voyage. His crew killed 8 individuals at what is now Saona Island. From that moment forward, the species was hunted continuously, primarily for oil, meat, and fur, by colonial fishing fleets across the Caribbean basin. Population estimates suggest 233,000 to 338,000 individuals before European colonization. By 1900, fewer than 200 remained. By 1950, likely fewer than 50. Persistent unconfirmed sightings since 1952 have come from Haiti in 1996, Jamaica in 2003, the Bahamas in 2014, Cuba in 2017, and Mexico in 2021. The species' closest living relative is the Hawaiian monk seal, which itself has fewer than 1,500 remaining individuals. Genetic divergence between the Caribbean and Hawaiian monk seals occurred approximately 3.5 million years ago. Unlike the other monk seal species, the Caribbean monk seal was reported to be unusually approachable by humans, described as almost docile by 19th century accounts. This trait contributed to its rapid extinction. Indigenous Taino oral traditions of the Caribbean include Manati del Mar, described in detail matching monk seal anatomy. The species' loss has dramatically altered Caribbean ecosystems. The Atlantic spider crab population exploded across the 20th century, partly attributed to loss of seal predation. In 2019, Jay Vavra of the University of California, San Diego, published habitat suitability modeling that identified 23 remote islands in the Caribbean basin where monk seal survival would still be theoretically possible. Most credible sighting locations cluster around the Mosquito Coast of Honduras and Nicaragua, the Sal Bank between Cuba and the Bahamas, and the remote Jardines de la Reina archipelago of southern Cuba. In 2020, a Cuban-Mexican cooperative survey deployed 78 underwater acoustic monitoring devices across remote Caribbean waters. The results have not been publicly released. The reasons for that delay are not specified. The 2008 Extinction Declaration was contested by several marine biologists who argued the time threshold for declaring extinction, 50 years without a confirmed sighting, was insufficient for a wide-ranging marine mammal whose habitat is dispersed across thousands of remote cays and reefs. The Bahamas trail camera image still has not been definitively explained. Number 9. The Japanese sea lion. In October of 2016, a South Korean diver named Lee Sang-hee was working in the waters around the Liancourt Rocks, a small group of islets in the Sea of Japan, contested between South Korea and Japan, geographically remote, with strict access controls due to the political dispute. Lee was photographing seabed wildlife. His underwater camera captured what appears to be a juvenile sea lion, approximately 1 meter in length, in the appropriate proportions for the species. Xalophus japonicus, the Japanese sea lion, officially declared extinct in 1991. The photographs have never been definitively authenticated. Image quality limitations and the politically restricted location have prevented independent verification. But the photographs exist, and they exist alongside 14 other documented eyewitness reports from South Korean fishing villages on Uleungdo between the 1980s and 2020. The last confirmed sighting was in 1974 on the Liancourt Rocks. Until 2003, Xalophus japonicus was classified as a subspecies of the California sea lion. That year, DNA analysis by Yasunori Sakurai of Hokkaido University elevated it to full species status, genetic divergence from the California sea lion dated to approximately 200,000 years ago. The species was endemic to the coastal waters around Japan, the Korean peninsula, and parts of eastern China. Adult males reach 2.5 meters and weighed up to 560 kilograms, 1,200 pounds, with a distinctive thick neck mane. Pre-harvest population is estimated at 30,000 to 50,000 individuals before commercial harvesting began in the 1860s. Japanese commercial sealing escalated during the 1900s, with 3,200 individuals killed annually at peak in the 1910s. By 1940, fewer than 100 remained. World War II finished the breeding population. The Japanese military fortified the Liancourt Rocks during the war, destroying the rookeries the surviving few hundred individuals depended on for reproduction. A 2009 South Korean-North Korean cooperative survey of remote eastern coast waters reported one unidentified pinnipe sighting. The political relationship between the two countries prevented further investigation. South Korean fishing community oral histories from Uleungdo describe rongi, sea lions appearing intermittently into the 1990s, with some elders maintaining the species never fully disappeared. The South Korean Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries launched a formal rediscovery and reintroduction program in 2016. Current Japanese policy treats the species as definitively extinct. Current Korean policy treats it as presumed extinct, possible survival. That divergence is itself remarkable. Two neighboring countries cannot agree on whether the species exists. A 2021 satellite imagery analysis identified seal-shaped objects on remote Korean coastal rocks that could not be definitively identified at available resolution. Lee Sang-hee's photographs still circulate. They have not been disproven. They have not been confirmed. Number 10. The Coelacanth. On December 22, 1938, a fishing trawler operating off the mouth of the Chalumna River in South Africa hauled in an unusual catch. The fisherman Hendrik Goosen sent word to Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer, curator of the East London Museum. She came to the dock. The fish was 1.5 meters long, deep blue, scaled with iridescent plates, speckled with white. Its fins moved in a way she had never seen. 8 of them, 4 lobed and supported by what looked almost like primitive limbs. She sent a sketch to ichthyologist J.L.B. Smith of Rhodes University. Smith opened the letter. He looked at the sketch. He sat down. He did not move for some time. What Courtenay-Latimer had drawn was a coelacanth. Coelacanths were Devonian fish. They had been extinct, according to every fossil record ever assembled, for 66 million years. They had died out at the KPG extinction, alongside the dinosaurs and the mosasaurs. And yet, there was one, dead, on a dockside in East London, South Africa. Smith named the species Latimeria chalumnae after Courtenay-Latimer and the river. The discovery rewrote textbooks. It rewrote the philosophy of extinction. A second species, Latimeria menadoensis, the Indonesian coelacanth, was discovered in 1997 by marine biologist Mark Erdman in a fish market in Manado, Indonesia. Coelacanths are not bony fish in the traditional sense. They are members of the Sarcopterygiae, the lobe-finned fishes that gave rise to all tetrapods, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, including humans. The 8 fins include 4 that are lobed and supported by bony structures resembling primitive limbs, exactly matching the tetrapod evolutionary precursors paleontologists had only ever seen in fossils. Adults reach 2 meters and weigh up to 90 kilograms. Lifespan is estimated at 80 to 100 years, with sexual maturity reached at approximately 55 years. Females give birth to fully formed young after gestation periods exceeding 3 years, the longest gestation of any vertebrate. Coelacanths inhabit underwater caves and steep volcanic slopes at depths of 90 to 700 meters, primarily off the Comoros Islands, Tanzania, Madagascar, Mozambique, and Indonesia. Total global population is estimated at fewer than 1,000 individuals. The Comoros Islands fishing community had been catching coelacanths regularly for centuries. They called them gombessa. They considered the fish worthless commercially, the flesh tastes oily, and the scales secrete excessive mucus, and they never reported the species to outside researchers. Western science had no idea. For 66 million years, a 2013 genetic analysis by Christoph England of the University of Konstanz revealed coelacanth genomes evolve approximately 30% slower than most vertebrates, earning them the nickname living fossil. The lineage has remained largely unchanged since the Devonian. the implications reshaped scientific thinking about cryptic species survival. The discovery directly inspired modern cryptozoology, providing scientific legitimacy to the search for other extinct species. 66 million years, hidden. In waters humans had been fishing for centuries. If a Devonian fish hid that long undetected, what else is down there? Every name on this list, every saber-toothed salmon, every armored Devonian giant, every sea cow and sea mink and sea lion and sea serpent, every one of them becomes mathematically possible the moment you accept that the coelacanth is real. The mathematics of hiding. Stop and consider what you actually know about the place where these animals would have to be living. 25% of the seafloor has been mapped at high resolution. The other 75% has not. The average depth of the ocean is 3,688 meters. The maximum depth in the Mariana Trench's Challenger Deep is 10,994 meters. 99% of the habitable space on Earth lies below the ocean surface, and ocean habitat is fully three-dimensional. Population biology has a concept called minimum viable population, the smallest number of individuals required for a species to persist long-term. For marine megafauna, the estimate is typically 50 to 500 individuals. The cheetah survived a genetic bottleneck with fewer than 100 founders. The northern elephant seal recovered from fewer than 30. The coelacanth has persisted for 66 million years in a population of fewer than 1,000. None of these numbers are detectable from any single scientific survey. For a population under 100 individuals distributed across an ocean basin, the chance of any single survey detecting one is below 0.01%. The Lazarus species concept was formalized by paleontologist David Jablonski in 1981. Documented Lazarus species in the modern era include the coelacanth, the Wollemi pine, the Lord Howe stick insect, the Cuban solenodon. The deep-sea refugia hypothesis suggests abyssal environments provide temporal stability over geological timescales. Hydrothermal vent communities were unknown to science until 1977. Until that year, no one knew that entire chemosynthetic biospheres existed. Today, we know they have been operating continuously for billions of years. Approximately 2,000 new marine species are described every year. Genetic monitoring through environmental DNA only became operational in 2008, limiting detection capabilities for most of scientific history. The polar abyss, the deepest trenches, the Comoros Channel, the volcanic slopes of remote Pacific islands, these places have changed less in 100 million years than the land surface has changed in 1,000. Large conspicuous animals are still being discovered routinely. The Sao Tome snake, the saola, Gigantopithecus blacki, found in 1935 in a Hong Kong apothecary. Major fauna can hide indefinitely. The question is no longer whether some extinct species survive. The question is how many. Why so many cases go unverified. If survival is mathematically possible, the obvious next question is why no one has confirmed it. The answer is structural. The scientific system is biased against rediscovery in measurable, documented ways. A researcher who claims a rediscovery and is wrong faces career-ending consequences, public ridicule, lost grants, professional marginalization. A researcher who declares a species extinct and is wrong faces no comparable cost. In some cases, the researcher has died before the rediscovery, beyond consequence entirely. The system punishes false positives much more harshly than false negatives, biasing the entire process toward declaring extinction. Publication bias compounds the issue. Journals prefer extinction confirmations over survival possibilities. The IUCN Extinction Declaration process uses formal time thresholds, typically 50 years without a confirmed sighting, that are widely acknowledged as overly aggressive for wide-ranging marine species. Many marine biologists privately argue these thresholds should be doubled or tripled. None publish that view. Eyewitness testimony from local communities is treated with systematic skepticism. Fishermen, indigenous peoples, and amateur naturalists who report sightings of extinct species are rarely taken seriously, despite the documented historical accuracy of such reports. The Comoros Islands fishermen knew about Gombessa for centuries before Western science recognized them. The Penobscot people knew about the Wetamis. The Atelmen know about the tuskfish. Traditional ecological knowledge is systematically excluded from scientific extinction assessments. Photograph authenticity skepticism creates another bias. The default assumption for ambiguous images is misidentification, not evidence. Adam Bartholomew's trail camera image, Li Sang-hee's underwater photographs, the 1976 Russian photographs, all sit in unverified status because the bar for confirming survival is set higher than the bar for declaring extinction. Geopolitical complications matter. Many remaining habitat zones are inaccessible due to political conflict: the Liancourt Rocks, North Korean coastal waters, Russian Far East, parts of the Caribbean. The 2020 Cuban-Mexican Cooperative Monk Seal Survey results have not been released. The Bocharnikov sea cow data sit in Russian archives. The institutional capacity to investigate these claims is structurally compromised. Many of these creatures may persist precisely because the system designed to detect them is not actively looking. Where to look? The technology is changing fast. Environmental DNA, eDNA, sampling can detect species presence from tiny water samples. Project Argo has deployed over 4,000 autonomous oceanographic floats that monitor vast ocean volumes continuously. Autonomous underwater vehicle deployment is expanding rapidly. The Schmidt Ocean Institute's 2018 fleet covered 16 million square kilometers in a single year. Sonar resolution has improved from 100 meters to 10 meters over the past decade. The targeted survey approach focuses these tools on identified historical refugia. The Comoros Channel, confirmed coelacanth habitat, theoretically suitable helicoprion habitat; the Russian Far East, potential stellars sea cow refugia, deep trench helicoprion habitat; the Caribbean Fringe, potential monk seal refugia; the Liancourt Rocks region, potential Japanese sea lion refugia; the Sea of Okhotsk, dunkleosteus sonar contacts, and saber-toothed salmon habitat overlap; the Indonesian archipelago, Latimeria menadoensis habitat, and the broader Sundaland refugium. The 2024 Gulf of Mexico exploration discovered over 100 new species during a single expedition. The 2020 Costa Rica abyssal survey identified over 200 new species in 30 days. AI-powered acoustic identification has improved dramatically. The 2023 cetacean AI breakthrough distinguished 47 cetacean species from acoustic data alone. Modern algorithms can identify species from 5-second audio samples. Crowdsourced citizen science is contributing. The 2024 ZSL Marine Sightings database has over 100,000 entries. Unmanned drone deployment is scaling rapidly. Deep-sea pressure-resistant sampling is improving, with new submersibles capable of operating at 10,000-meter depths. Improving access to historically restricted military hydrophone data, particularly Russian and US. Cold War-era recordings is opening decades of hidden acoustic evidence. Over the next 20 years, the rate of marine rediscoveries is expected to dramatically accelerate. What rediscovery would mean? Consider what would happen if any of the species on this list were confirmed alive. Extinction theory and population dynamics models would require fundamental revision. Conservation policy would shift overnight, with immediate legal protection requirements under international marine treaties. Phylogenetic implications would be profound. Relict populations potentially preserve genetic information lost from the main lineage, the way the coelacanth has preserved early tetrapod evolution information available from no fossil. Indigenous knowledge systems systematically dismissed for centuries would be validated. The Penobscot Wedemus traditions, the Itelmen tuskfish stories, the Aleut Kapusnik accounts, the Taino Manatee del Mar, all would be revisited as legitimate ecological evidence rather than mythology. The Komodo dragon model, a living dinosaur species, generating massive economic and cultural value through ecotourism, would expand to include any rediscovered Lazarus species. Extinction declarations would be treated more cautiously, with longer time thresholds before a species could be officially declared gone. Funding redistribution would flow toward rediscovery investigations rather than just extinction documentation. Cryptozoology, currently associated with pseudoscience, would shift toward legitimate biological inquiry. The Walimi pine effect, the 1994 Australian rediscovery of a living fossil tree, already changed public perception of plant biology in similar ways. Confirmed Lazarus species typically reveal entire associated ecosystems previously unknown. The coelacanth led to systematic exploration of submarine cave ecosystems off East Africa. The role of folklore and oral tradition would be revalidated as evidence rather than dismissed as superstition. The 2024 IUCN policy review was initiated specifically to revise extinction criteria in light of recent rediscoveries, most notably the Atlantic gray whale's reappearance. Every rediscovery is a reminder of how much we don't know. Every rediscovery is a correction to a system that issued a death certificate prematurely, and every rediscovery makes the next one more likely. The ocean's memory. The ocean is 4 billion years old. It has been continuous, unbroken, since shortly after the Earth itself coalesced. Water present, salt present, life beginning sometime in the first half-billion years and never since interrupted. The deep sea has changed less in 100 million years than the land surface has changed in 1,000. To creatures hiding in the abyss, the KPG extinction 66 million years ago was an event that happened upstairs. Stromatolites, 3.5 billion-year-old microbial structures, still grow in remote Australian bays. The horseshoe crab's lineage is 450 million years old, essentially unchanged. The nautilus is a 500 million-year-old cephalopod still thriving in Pacific waters. Lampreys, 360 million-year-old jawless fish, still patrol cold northern rivers. The Greenland shark lives over 400 years per individual, meaning specimens alive today were swimming the North Atlantic when Hans Egede saw his sea serpent. Earth's oceans are functionally infinite from the perspective of any creature trying to disappear into them. 6 mass extinctions, billions of species, all preserved somewhere in the deep sea's memory. 99.9% of species that have ever existed are extinct, but the rate at which we are discovering that some of them are not extinct keeps accelerating. Given the size of the ocean, the temporal stability of its depths, the documented frequency of Lazarus rediscoveries, and the limits of our detection technology, the number of officially extinct species actually surviving is mathematically certain to be greater than 0. The coelacanth's lesson is that for every confirmed Lazarus species, dozens or hundreds remain undiscovered. The asymmetry between extinction declarations and rediscoveries is structural. Extinction can be declared in years, rediscovery often requires decades. The next generation of marine biologists may view our current extinct lists as a list of creatures hidden in plain sight. For every story we have told here, every saber-toothed salmon stripped from a Kamchatka river, every spiral-toothed shark surfacing from a forgotten deep, every armored giant ghosting through the Arctic dark, every gray whale appearing 2 centuries late off a Mediterranean shore, every sea cow drifting through kelp 200 years after the last harpoon, every monk seal printing a paw mark on a Bahamian beach, every sea lion surfacing where one shouldn't be, for every story we have told, the ocean keeps 1,000 more. When the next rediscovery happens, and it will happen, probably within your lifetime, we will wonder how we ever believed it was extinct in the first place.